Welcome back to Combust Astrology. My name's Liv. I'm going to be recording the full moon for August 19th. It's at 2:25:33 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for New York. And this video will actually it's being currently recorded a week before the actual full moon. That way we can kind of also dive into some speculation on what the week also might entail because it's going to be a lot of chaos and I don't know if I'm going to have the time to cover it all. So, with that being said, let's get into it. So, what are our main key points going into this moon? So, we're looking at where Jupiter and Mars is at. We're looking at Saturn, and then we're looking at Venus. The reason for that, in case you live under a rock or you just don't know enough about astrology, which is perfectly fine, is that these planets are creating a configuration that's called a T square, right? It's a giant T. And the T square is pretty much two squares where you have Venus and Virgo is squaring the Mars and Jupiter in Gemini, and then the other square is the Mars and Jupiter in Gemini also squaring the Saturn in Pisces. So whenever I look at this configuration, I know there's a bunch of ways of going about it, but for me, it's like you just take the squares and you split them, and then you look at the actual like underlying factor. So right now, it's the values of self with the element of Virgo, right? So we know Virgo to be super nitpicky and super like deprecating to self, but also very frugal, also very practical, also very much a honestly, Venus and Virgo might be one of the really, really, really reliable partners that you could really have, actually, because when you think about it, the Taurus energy and the Capricorn, it's like a good in between. However, with this comes a lot of self-sacrificing energy, and that's where I think it's a little bit too self-deprecating because, Venus and Virgo will definitely attack its body 24/7 and aim to be like the thinnest thing on earth or never really give itself what it desires and never really treats itself for the things that it really should have, right? And then because this energy itself is like that, that's one part. Now, it is squaring Mars in Gemini. So, one thing about the mutables is that when you get the energy of the mutable squares, usually the axis of the squares, meaning like hold on, let me get a different color just so this makes sense. Meaning the axis of Sag and Gemini. Sag is abundance without preparation, right? When you have it attack Virgo, meaning like the square of these two is that Sag, let's just say we're going on a trip through my favorite rocket ship. Okay, sorry, that was intrusive. Let's just say you're going on a trip. Sag is like we set a destination. I'm already packing a shirt, a pair of socks, and some pants, and a bottle of water. Virgo is like, what about bug repellent? What about the camp tent? What about band-aids? And so it's like there's this lack of a pause for Sag, but with Gemini it's the opposite because Sag is like I'm gonna get there. Gemini is gonna be like I just want to think about it. I want to obsess over the hypotheticals but never really actually follow through. And so that's where the Gemini here is like, Gemini is androgynous. I try to tell people that because it's like it's both. And so the Gemini is like, I want to look at every side and entertain every side. And so when it squares the whoops, I shouldn't have drawn this as Venus, ignore that. But when it has a square with that Gemini energy to Virgo, I'm just gonna draw this. It's not Venus and Gemini, but just to keep that consistency. When it squares the Venus and Virgo, then it's like, oh, now I don't just need one Band-Aid kit. I need a Band-Aid kit, a light kit, a bug repellent kit, a flat tire kit. Like it's just excessive, right? So understanding that difference now, when we actually do look at how this manifests, you now have to consider that there's a lot of stuff going on here with the Virgo and the Mars and Jupiter aspect of this square. It's very much like, hey, are we ready? Are we ready? Are we ready? Are we ready? And like the Mars and Jupiter is just like, can we calm down? Right? This might literally come across as annoying to some people because it's like, give it a break. Like, take a moment and just chill. And if we're considering the rising and the placements of the houses, then this is obviously going to be your relationships with people. And this is a really big thing that with the Mercury retrograding, it's obviously like going to be in Leo, but in this current past week, with Mercury going retrograde, it's making a lot of impulsive decisions. And with this specific full moon, especially as the week goes on, where we're going to see Jupiter and Mars, like both of them squaring Saturn in a very harsh degree, like making you feel like you have to chop off parts of your limbs to be able to afford something or to be able to actually do something, right? Like removing the things that you love from your life because you're like overthinking it and assuming that everything is going to be cathartic is very much what that T square is going to do. But the precursor to that has been Mercury when it was in Virgo. Or I'm saying when it was because you're watching this, assuming you're watching this in the past. Okay, I'm not even going to do that to myself. But this is being recorded in the past, so therefore you're watching this in the future, which therefore means that Virgo was Mercury as it's retrograding. There we go. So going into that, another key thing that you really want to cover, I'm actually just going to make this video about like the T squares and the full moon and all of it all together. That way I don't have to respond to other things. But like we're just going to cover this portion. Mars and Jupiter together, right? Ignoring the full moon and the position of the rising, that alone is like actually so much chaos. Like RIP for all the Sag people because like I don't know where you got Sag, but you're about to be a crackhead. This is like, especially if you're opposing at the later, the last decant of Gemini of Sag, like how are you going to balance this, right? This is excessive. This is more energy than you know what to do. And I think the biggest thing I would urge for people, I love working out, but it's like I'm definitely taking my rest days, even though I could work out twice a day for the whole week with the energy levels that I've been feeling lately. But I'm choosing to just stick to one day of working out, sorry, one workout per day, 20 minutes of yoga after my workout, 15 minutes of yoga before, so I can make sure to stretch because I want to avoid injury. And that's the thing about this Gemini energy because Mars is there, you really want to make sure you don't go and do something that's going to injure you. It doesn't just have to be physical. I just have Sag placements, so I know when I get in the gym, I'm like a kid in a candy store. But wherever you have that Gemini energy touching, that is going to give you overload. And then now considering the actual T square aspect, wherever this is aspecting the house in your chart, right? If you want to really learn more about your chart, just schedule a reading with me. Wherever this actually aspects in a square, now you have to sit back and say, okay, where do I have Virgo? Because wherever you have Virgo, you're probably going to be doing impulsive things with trying to overthink because of the excessive energy, as you've already started from that with the Mercury in Virgo. Now, wherever you have Pisces, the Pisces part here, and I haven't talked about Saturn yet too much, but the Saturn aspect is to reel you back in and say, hey, it's not real. You're just crazy. You're being a little delusional. And that's the core of Pisces. It's to allow you to be silly willy and be delusional in a standpoint of the thing that you think is happening isn't really happening. And I really want to move over to another part here that a lot of people that have been covering this, when I see it on social media, that they're forgetting. Neptune is still at 29 degrees of like Pisces. Like, don't forget that. Especially when you have the early degrees of a cardinal, whether it's like Scorpio or Aries. What? Scorpio is not no cardinal. That's a fix. I'm talking about Capricorn, Aries, and then Cancer, and then Libra. Because even though they're not like conjunct, if you have an early degree, like a 0 degree Aries, it's to me it's a conjunction. It's a conjunction out of sign, but it's a conjunction, whatever. And so like you really want to remember that because now you have to think about the fact that the energy of Neptune. if it's squaring one of these aspects, is creating a delusion that you're trying to think of the future. And I'm using the future as an example just because when the sign is in the other house, it's moving. It's a movement because this whole real wheel dial thing is an example of the actual planets and they're moving. So as the planet is moving into another house, it's moving in our actual skies. And that's a metaphor psychologically for you making decisions because of worrying too much about that future event or future thing that you're trying to stop. And this is where I come back to say it's not real because the Venus in Virgo can't take a chill pill. And so it's trying to make sure that it's so perfect. And I think, oh my gosh, where did I see this? The astrology podcast, their Virgo video had I've watched like all their videos when I was really like digesting astrology like a crackhead. And I don't know the name of the lady, but she said this thing because he interviews Chris Brennan. I should give him his like flowers, all of his flowers. He's revolutionized astrology for this um, past 2 decades. But when you have Virgoism, and I'm calling it Virgoism because it's like too much Virgo and you're like unwell, but like you will take something and you'll whittle it down and you're like, okay, now it's perfect. And then you put it down and you're like, no. And then you keep whittling it like until it's gone. Right. And that is the thing here that this Venus and Virgo with the square to the Mars and Jupiter will do. Right. And on the day of the full moon, it is, going to be the Gemini element or whatever. But like when you look at the actual aspect of this energy in its opposition, all of this energy is like it's not real, right? You've made up an idea in your head and it doesn't really exist, but because of the pragmaticism of this Venus and Virgo, it wants to carry it out because it can't stop thinking about it, right? It's biting its nails to that factor. I think like a really big thing though is, and I don't usually advocate for drug use, not because it's bad, but because I'm not about to tell you to do that, right? But for the once and few non-financial advice, non-health advice, if I was a smoker, I'd probably smoke through this week just so that if I have heavy mutable placements, I don't make a fool out of myself because at the end of this month, when the retrograde is over, a lot of people are going to be regretting the decisions they make in this past week, this week, and getting closer towards the end of next week just because they're not thinking the way they usually do. And so I really want to hone in on that because our last thing that we're going to cover, oh my God, this is a 12-minute video, is that like, hey, Sun and Pluto, whoa, Sun and Pluto, Sun and Pluto, Sun being at the last degrees of Leo here, it's in conjunct to this 0 degree retrograded Pluto in Aquarius, right? This is a really important thing because once again, this 3 degree orb, right, might not seem like it's doing too much, but you have to think about how when the full moon happens, right, the full moon itself is going to oppose this. So it's going to feel like when we had the new moon, it was on the 12th, or I think the 9th actually, but it was 12 degrees of the sun and the moon and Leo together. So now you became the main character. So when I look at this full moon, I'm like, you're high on your own crack. You're high on your own supply, and you're not realizing that there's still other people. And I think this Pluto in Aquarius, as it in conjuncts that sun, and the Mercury is retrograded, right? I think there's a day in the I think it's like the Wednesday when Uranus is going to square Mercury exact on Wednesday. I don't know if I can animate this if it's not gonna, I'm not gonna take that risk because this thing crashes a lot. But this right here, when Uranus and Mercury square, this energy is so much like, you know what? I'm gonna say what I have to say, and I'm gonna regret it 5 minutes from now. Like so when you have the sun and the Mercury conjuncting and the opposition here, I really caution people to be like, okay, you were the main character, you still are the main character, but like for a moment, look around, right? Look around at the cast, because if you don't, they're coming for you. Have you ever seen like in a movie where um, oh, what was that good book? The pigs, the flies, Lord of the Flies, or something like that, where it's like once you become okay, let's say you start a revolution, right? Okay, cool. We behead the guy that's in charge or the woman that's in charge. Now you take the stand. Okay, cool. You have to realize that there's another coup getting ready for you. And I feel like that's what this energy really hones in on. Like there's another coup. Like you're not safe. So if you don't take a moment to like step back and be like, yeah, I took over and I'm the main character, but I still have friends, I still have XYZ, you're going to get your head chopped off. And this day, specifically with the whole energy, I don't feel like it activates that specifically like as if like that day is going to be the day you get your head chopped off. Excuse me, I'm channeling, so I'm starting to speak a lot faster. But I feel like this whole week, which is why I'm releasing this earlier, it should be released tomorrow or maybe the day. I don't know. Depends how busy. But this should be released before Tuesday. I'm just saying. So like I'm releasing it earlier because like this week, be on your best behavior. Like there are so many cycles that this week is closing, whether it's 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and a 35-year cycle of like a part of it. Like we're at a tension point, right? We're also at a really big point because something that you learn, I learned this from I think Rick Levine. He talks about it a lot. Saturn and Jupiter give us decade-long cycles. So if you look at it, when Saturn and Jupiter conjunct, that is the start of a cycle. And then I believe this takes like 5 years, I think. Don't quote me one. Yeah, I think it takes like 5 years with the retrogrades and stuff to get like another square. And then once Jupiter moves on over to Virgo, that's a whole 10 years. And then after that, 15, and then this would be 20, I believe. Math might be a little bit off. Maybe it's like 18 to 21. I don't know. Just give me that. But it's like we're at a tension point, and it's like these tension points are basically squares, and so they create this energy where it's like, where we at? And especially because it's like a conjunction with Pisces, it's like, how's the delusion? How are we feeding into that? What's the energy like? What's everything that we're taking in, and how is that really going? And I'm saying all of this just to say we're the social conscious is making a decision, and it's not conscious, it's subconscious. I'll say that. And that is presenting itself consciously in the social conscious. But it's like Jupiter and Saturn, when they square like that, especially with Pisces and Gemini, that's financial difficulty. So, with this being in the seventh house, with this energy as well, I look at that and I'm like, oh, on the specific day of the full moon, of course. But I'm looking at this and I'm like, these two things where you have Pisces and Jupiter is like a thing where you're gonna have to make sure you filter it out, and you're gonna have to make sure you want to be as frugal as you can be with your energy, or else it will consume you to no end, is how I look at it. Not because you're excessively wasting energy on it like Sag, but it would just siphon from you, right? Like the siren energy of Pisces will just take and take till you just look around and you're like, I don't have anything. Okay, so I just went on a whole really just channel there. But I hope that you enjoyed the video. I hope that this makes sense. This is going to be a very interesting, very dramatic week that we have coming up. And I wanted to give you all the tools that you can possibly have to be the best version of yourself as you look around and you see people running around like headless chickens. It's not to bring fear or to make you feel scared. That's not what I love to do with astrology. I like to tell you the facts of what it is whenever I do my readings. I'm going to tell you what I see. That way you can take that information and brace yourself to say, okay, cool. This person is telling me this. This person is doing this. I know a lot of people that have ended relationships. This person's leaving me. This person is arguing with me. This person is whatever it is. You can look at them with love and say, I see that you are not yourself and you are making decisions that you most likely wouldn't. And I have I have empathy for you to look and say, it's okay. I don't judge you. I don't have hate for you, but I do need to distance myself from you because if you let that consume you, you will give in and you will also be a part of that energy. So, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Um, I'm posting this on multiple platforms, so wherever you're watching this at, feel free to like, follow, slash subscribe, and also comment if you have questions. I don't mind making more. Actually, I won't be able to respond immediately because I have some things I have to do. But wishing you well through this very eventful week. Take care.